Hey there, musicians. It's me, Miss M, and welcome to music class. Today, we've got a very special music class because we're celebrating Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month this month, and we're going to take a look at some music from a different culture, from a different country than our own. There's this really cool field trip that we're going to go on, and it's going to be led by a performer by the name of Anh Vo. Anh Vo is a Vietnamese. Vietnamese, do you know what country that would be? If you said Vietnam, you're correct. She is a Vietnamese musician and composer, and she's going to teach us about Vietnamese culture and about the country of Vietnam and about the instruments, the music, and what all of that means. Because from what she says, music is a huge part of their culture in Vietnam. So we're gonna listen to what she has to say and take a look. I want to name that I didn't want to teach you this because I, as a white person who was born and raised in the United States, don't know very much about Vietnam and their culture and their music. So it's not super appropriate for me to try to teach you it because everything I learned comes from like a book or learning about it online. And it's really important that people who are a part of that culture are the people who teach us about that culture because that's how we learn authentically. I can teach you some things that I've read about Vietnam and Vietnamese music, but it's not authentic because I'm not a part of that culture and there's a lot that I don't understand. So Van An is going to be what we call a culture bearer. And a culture bearer is someone who is a part of a specific culture and they come and share their culture with other people and teach their culture. Culture bearers are super duper important because they are actually a part of that culture. They understand the meaning, the significance, and the context of music in their country, because in their society, in their culture, wherever they are, because in some cultures, in some countries, music has different purposes. Sometimes it's religious or sacred music, or it's only used for specific ceremonies, or sometimes it's the stuff they listen to on the radio. And me as a American who is not a part of any Asian cultures, if I were to go on YouTube and just search for Vietnamese music, I could come up with a lot of stuff, but I don't really know the significance and where that came from. So we're going to learn from a culture bearer today about Vietnam. She's going to show us some really cool instruments and she's going to perform some of the pieces that she wrote as a composer and performs on all her instruments. While we're listening, I want us to think about one thing in particular, and that's that different does not mean weird or wrong or anything else. Just this music might sound very, very different than what you're used to listening to in music class at home, and it might sound like nothing you've ever heard before. It's very unique, and that's great. That's fantastic. That's part of what being a world community is, knowing that there's all these different variations on music all over the world. So when we're listening, it might sound different and maybe a little strange to you, but that doesn't mean that it's weird or gross or we don't like it. So we're going to go into this with an open mind and remember that this is hundreds of thousands of people's culture. This is the music that they listen to that in that culture. And it can kind of hurt their feelings if we say something like, oh, I don't like this, or oh, this sounds really weird. Just like if someone said to you, you were listening to a song and then someone comes over and be like, oh, that's super weird. I don't like that. That might hurt your feelings a little bit. And the same goes, we want to think about that when we're talking about other cultures' music. We don't want to say, oh, I don't like this. You can dislike it, but maybe keep it in our head. We don't need to shout out, oh, this is weird. You can keep those thoughts to yourself because those might be hurtful thoughts. But if you appreciate the music, that's the things you can verbalize, you can share out, say, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I've never seen an instrument like that. Or, wow, this is really different than what I listen to. But we don't want to judge anyone else's culture or anyone's music because that's a part of who they are as a person. And to to say rude or unkind things about part of who they are can be really hurtful to people. So I want you to remember open mind while we watch, and remember own, and even if it's different, it's not weird, it's just different than what you're used to. And that's the whole point of learning, of seeing all these musical cultures, is expanding our horizons and seeing more. See, because the music we listen to in our country is just such a small piece of the world. And I want us all to be global citizens, world citizens. So we have to understand and be able to appreciate other people's cultures. And with that, let's take a look at the virtual field trip with Van Vo. Let me share my screen. We'll get started.
Welcome to Poway On Stage. Today we are presenting Van Vo, a performer spotlight from Cal Performance's digital classroom. Click on the spotlight to begin.
Here we go. All right, let's do the before the show. You can see here, this is Van Vo playing on what looks to be a type of drum. And you can see she's also got a microphone, so she might be singing. Let's see what she's got before the show for us. All right, ooh, uh-oh, I clicked the wrong thing. Oh no, back. We don't want to do the instruments first. We want to meet Van Vo first. Let's meet her and see who she is.
Let's meet Van Vo. Meet Van Vo. She comes from a family of musicians and started playing the dan trang, or plucked zither, at the age of 4. She graduated with distinction from the Vietnamese Academy of Music, where she later taught. In 1995, Van An won the championship title in the Vietnam National Dan Trang competition, along with first prize for Best Solo Performance of Modern Folk Music. Van An also plays the monochord, bamboo xylophone, traditional drums, and many other instruments.
So she plays a lot of instruments. She started playing this Dan Train over here at the age of 4 years old. So younger than you are now. She was playing this instrument, which is really complicated, actually. So it's incredible that she was able to play that. Let's keep going.
Van Vo strives to bring Vietnamese traditional music to a wider audience. She moved to San Francisco in 2001 and collaborates with many amazing musicians to blend the unique sounds of her instruments with other styles of music. Van An was the first Vietnamese artist to perform at the White House and received the Artist Laureate Award for her community contributions through the arts.
That's really cool that she was the first Vietnamese artist ever to perform at our White House, which is so cool, but also so crazy that in our lifetime, that was the first time a Vietnamese musician performed at the White House. That's crazy. During probably my lifetime or your other teacher's lifetime, maybe your parents' lifetime. So that was really recent for the first Vietnamese artist to be at the White House. So let's talk a little bit about Vietnam, where Van An is from.
About Vietnam. Geography. Vietnam is in Southeast Asia and is a long, narrow nation shaped like the letter S. Its neighbors include China to the north and Laos and Cambodia to the west. To the east and south, Vietnam has a 1,000-mile coastline that runs along the South China Sea. The mountains of the Annam Cordillera rise over most of the western side of Vietnam.
So there's Vietnam on the world map. Oh no, I zoomed in. Unzoom. Zoom out. There we go. I'll stop using my mouse. It does that. You can see on the world map over here, it's way over here. Can you name any of the other countries that are near it? I see we have China. Over here's India. It's actually pretty close to Australia over here. This is the continent of, does anyone know what continent this one is? If you do, it's Africa. Over here, up here's Russia. And right here, that little S-shaped red mark is Vietnam. You can see it's right on the ocean there, so it's probably got a ton of beaches.
Nature. Vietnam's mountains, forests, wetlands, and long coastline contain many different habitats that support a great variety of wildlife. Vietnam is home to 270 types of mammals, 180 reptiles, 80 amphibians, and 800 bird species. Vietnam's rare and unusual animals include giant catfish, Indo-Chinese tigers, Saola antelopes, and Sumatran rhinos. Tropical forests once covered most of Vietnam, but over the past few hundred years, logging has reduced the forest cover to only about 19%. The government has launched a replanting program in an attempt to restore these woodlands.
Wow, some of the animals that they have are super cool. I love personally rhinos, so I'd love to go there and see the rhinos and listen to their music, of course.
People and culture. Most Vietnamese people live in the countryside, mainly in the river delta regions of the north and south. Recently, though, people have begun to move to the main cities of Ho Chi Minh, formerly Saigon, and Hanoi. Vietnamese food is a blend of Chinese and Thai styles and features seafood and homegrown fruits and vegetables. The most popular sports in Vietnam include soccer, table tennis, volleyball, and martial arts. As a communist country, Vietnam has no official religion, but people are free to worship if they want to, and many follow what's called the three teachings of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. Government and economy. Vietnam is a socialist state governed by the Communist Party of Vietnam. A president, chosen by the National Assembly, is head of state and commander of the armed forces. An appointed prime minister runs the government. Vietnam's main exports include seafood, rice, oil, shoes, wooden products, machinery, electronics, coffee, and clothing.
So Vietnam has a president like we do, but it sounds like the president has a different job than our president in the United States because the president is in charge of the armed forces, which is their military, where they have a prime minister who runs the government, which is kind of the job of our president in our country. Do you use any of the things that are on here? Clothing, shoes, rice? Maybe you've gotten some products from Vietnam. I have definitely seen that little made in Vietnam on some of the things I have in my household. Maybe you should check and see if there's anything you have from Vietnam. And finally, my favorite part, let's meet some instruments from Vietnam. They are very different than the instruments you see here, and not something that we generally learn and play in school in the United States because they're not part of our culture.
Meet some traditional Vietnamese instruments. Click on an instrument to learn more about it and to hear it play.
Which one should we let's start with the Don Train or the plucked zither. It's called, I think we call it a zither, but in Vietnamese, it's Don Train.
This is the Dan Trang.
Dan Train. See? That's why I can't teach this.
The Dan Trang is a plucked zither that has a long wooden sound box with steel strings, movable bridges, and tuning pegs positioned on its top. The Dan Trang originally had 14 strings, but today typically has 17. However, larger instruments with up to 25 strings have been created. The dan trang is played with two hands. Musicians use 2 or 3 fingers on their right hand to produce a melody by plucking strings on one side of the instrument's bridges. On the other side of the bridges, they use their left hand to bend the notes. Fun fact: at times, the dan trang can be played with a bow for a very different sound.
Interesting. And we'll see Vanan, she's going to play the Dan train there's going to be a little performance of her demoing some of her compositions, and you will get to see her playing the Dan train, which is super cool. It looks really hard. Does it sound similar to any instruments that you know of that we might play in our culture, in our country? It's got a lot of strings, so it would probably be part of the string family. But does it sound similar to anything else or look similar to anything else we have? Now let's try the Dan Trung. I hope I'm saying this right. And that's part of the reason why I shouldn't be the one teaching this. Someone from this culture who can pronounce it correctly should really be the person who teaches us about this culture. This looks kind of like, what does it kind of look like? It looks similar to something we have and something we play. Let's take a look.
This is the dan trung. The dan trung is made of bamboo, with tubes that have a notch at one end and a slanted edge at the other. The long tubes produce low-pitched tones, while the short tubes make high-pitched tones. The dan trung comes from the central highlands of Vietnam and is associated with the spiritual life of the ethnic minority groups in that region. The dan trung has a sound that is bright and upbeat. It is often played at weddings, ceremonies, and festivals while people sing and dance to traditional songs. Fun fact: the dan trung can have as many as 48 tubes in multiple layers. It is also one of the only traditional Vietnamese instruments which plays the chromatic scale, a 12-tone scale usually found in Western music.
Ooh, that's a cool fact there at the end. It's one of the only Vietnamese instruments that plays the chromatic scale. The chromatic scale, if you don't know what that is, that's what the piano plays. So it has all the same notes as a piano, where a lot of other Asian instruments do not use the chromatic scale and don't have all the same notes that are on the piano. They're more frequently used something called the pentatonic scale. But this specific instrument, and if you said it reminds you of a xylophone, that would be correct. It's kind of like our xylophones, but theirs are made out of bamboo. And they have some significance because it says here it's part of spiritual life, it's part of ceremonies and festivals and weddings. So there's a significance to this instrument where we don't really have that same significance of our version, the xylophone, at least to my knowledge. In my life experience, I haven't thought specifically that xylophones were super important to my personal music, but for someone in Vietnam, it might be super important to them. And then one last thing I see on here, just a reminder, because we went over this, we remember the bigger it is, the lower it is, and the smaller it is, the higher it is. So just like almost any other instrument, the smaller it gets, the smaller the piece of bamboo, the higher pitch we have, and the longer pieces of bamboo are the lowest pieces. Just like if you had what's another instrument that has different size? If we take a flute that's pretty small, it's pretty high. And then we take a tuba that's really big and it's really low. So just like that, this follows that same rule. Small is high, big is low. I think, we've got one more. The Dan Bao, I believe. And if you look, this one only has one string. So let's learn about the Dan Bao.
This is the dan bo.
Tempo. See, really technology. You think they're getting those different pitches with only one string. Yeah, that might be played.
The danbo is a single stringed instrument with four parts: a wooden or bamboo soundboard, a rod made of wood or buffalo horn, a dried gourd or coconut shell, and a single silk or metal string. The danbo is often played solo or by itself in Vietnamese folk music or to accompany poetry readings, but
Yeah.
is also commonly used by today's Asian pop and rock groups. Playing the danbo may look easy, but it requires great precision. With the right hand, the musician plucks the string with a wooden pick and touches it lightly with the side or heel of the hand to produce harmonies. The left hand bends, presses, releases, and vibrates the flexible rod. This varies the tension of the string and changes the pitch and length of the notes. Fun fact: according to legend, long ago, when farmers finished working in the fields, they would tie their baskets to stalks of bamboo. During the night when the wind blew, the basket's strings would vibrate and the tuneful sounds inspired them to create the danbo.
Ooh, that's really cool. Knowing the history of how this instrument came about. That's something we don't necessarily know about all our instruments. So that's super cool to learn. And that's all the instruments. So I think we're about ready to listen to the performance led by Van Vo. So let's watch her show. All right. I won't interrupt her teaching.
Hello, my name is Anh Vo. I am Vietnamese American artist and I create Vietnamese art music. This is Vietnamese đàn trưng, the bamboo xylophone. Believe it or not, the whole instrument is made by different type of bamboo that we have in Vietnam. So the instrument has the shape of the houses that in South Highland of Vietnam. This instrument specially made by my uncle, the master instrument maker, because it helps me to pack it very compact so that I can travel and share my music everywhere in the world. Đàn trưng is very unique in a way because this is the only instrument that has chromatic system that we have in Vietnamese music. And the instruments highly, just like any percussion instrument, it has very high energy when I play, and each time I feel like it's a big workout for me.
bởi tôi đành mà dắt mẹ để tới nơi lâm thuyền ra những loài áng thú hổ hoang, người đòi quen man lòng thành tôi kính dâng vậy cho nên mù mịt mà tôi tầm. Ấy bởi vì đâu binh lửa, bởi tôi đành mà dắt mẹ mà để tới nơi lâm thuyền ra thân nhung loài áng thú hổ hoang, người đòi quen man lòng thành tôi kính dâng cho nên mịt mà tôi tầm. hổ hoang, người đời đời quen mắt, lòng thành tôi kính dâng vậy cho nên mù mịt mà tôi tâm. Bởi thế cho nên mù mịt tôi tâm học nghề đàn hát kiếm ăn, qua ngày tôi rơi mẹ chồng cắt thịt mà cắn tay. Chàng Trương Yên ơi, chàng này có biết đến nông nỗi này mà sao thấu cho chàng.
When you talk about Vietnamese culture, you make sure that to talk about 3 elements: the music, the food, and the language. This is my herb garden. The herbs in Vietnamese food is very important. Each herb will really enhance and change the taste of the dish. So everything that you see in the garden is very important to make it the right herbs for the right dish. Just like in the music, you really need to know what kind of music, what region that it comes from. And in my music, I use the culture of the region to ground my music and build it up from there. There's so many different herbs to use in Vietnamese dishes. There's a lot of different sisal and basil and mint. And just like in Vietnamese music, each time when I create a new piece, I would think of what instrument that I want to use. In Vietnam, we have 3 different regions, North, Central, and South. And we have 54 ethnic groups. Each region, we have different sub-music genres. So like when you cook or when I cook, I would think of what herbs that I want to use. So this is a Vietnamese mint, and in northern dish, the Vietnamese chicken salad, I would use this, and this mint will help to spice up the dish. So it's just the same thing when I create new song. If I think that I not only want to sing, but also scream or speak to express more different emotion, then I would go for Đào Chầu Văn. The music genre allows me to go very high and then suddenly change into very low, and I can speak. And Đào Chầu Văn is a great music that we have in north of Vietnam. This is Vietnamese đàn bầu, the monochord. It has only 1 string, and it was invented in 9th century. Before, the instrument has only 1 big bamboo trunk and the dry gourd. And the whammy bar that is still use the same material from the water buffalo horn, and it's very flexible. The instrument that just like the human voice when you listen to it, it's really, it helps me to go up and down seamlessly from one note to the other. the second piece, it was my transcription, transpose, and arrangement from a great piece of Eric Satie, Gnostium number 3. I started to learn music when I was 4 years old. My father taught me How he got into being a musician was a whole another story. During the Vietnam War, which is the American war in Vietnam, he had to enlist to the Northern Army because he was the only man in the family. But then he didn't want to hold gun and shoot people, so he signed up as a musician. And he played terrible guitar at the time, but he got away with it. So when he got back from the war, I was born, and by the time I was 4 years old, he started to teach me music. By 6 years old, my parents asked me to choose an instrument. And they actually wanted me to learn cello, but I thought that the cello looked ugly. I told my parents that no, I don't want to learn that instrument. And one day I saw a lady in the neighborhood. She played đàn tranh, the Vietnamese guitar, and the way that she played is very feminine. And I thought that it looked beautiful. And then that's how I started with my first instrument, the đàn tranh. This is Vietnamese đàn tranh. The đàn tranh also has brothers and sisters. The Chinese kuchung, the Korean kayagum, and Japanese koto. But Vietnamese đàn tranh has much higher pitch because it's all the string made by metal. And we use a lot of left hand in playing Vietnamese đàn tranh. To make a very short description, I think that many people here in the US know about the Chinese culture, but not much about Vietnamese đàn tranh. So you just think of it as a Vietnamese đàn tranh is a female instrument. The pitch is higher and then soft spoken. And the Chinese kuching is just like male instrument, very aggressive and low voices. So I can, on the đàn tranh, I can make a drop of water or the wave of the ocean. And then in Vietnamese traditional music, we really emphasize on the left hand because the left hand helps us to define, reflect the language, Vietnamese language. We have 6 different tones in our language. So the left hand helps us to change the tone, just like when we speak. And now you can see that how the music reflects the language and connect it with food as well. Just like that, if I don't use my left hand at all, or I use my left hand in a different way, I can present you music from north of Vietnam or south of Vietnam or central of Vietnam in the different ways that I play on my instrument. For example, this is a vibrato that for the central of Vietnam, very slow and deeper. And then in north of Vietnam, I also vibrate on the same note, but it's much lighter. The left hand of the musicians and of the player is emphasized on every single instrument of, from Vietnam. When I compose my music, I really want to have my composition to tell like a story, and each part of the composition, just like when you read a book, and when you turn the page, it will be the next chapter that you discover new detail, the journey, or even story on excitement or sadness. And also in my composition, I really want to share voices of the community, because I think that if my music doesn't reflect what my communities have to share, then it doesn't really mean much. So many times I will go out and interview people to share with me stories, share with me the experience that I don't have as a first hand, and then I incorporate it and have those experiences as my inspirations or even as an element of the music. The last piece is Queen of the Night. I think at this point, all of us should look inside and look deep into our heart and feel that, or find the unity and peace that we can be together so that we can be stronger. I hope that the music that you heard today would give you a good overview of Vietnamese culture and how my music, Vietnamese music art, would be here for me and all for you. And one day you will come to visit Vietnam. Thank you.
All right. And that was Anh Vo. And that is a little bit of an introduction. Of course, one person in 30 minutes can't teach you everything there is to know about a country's musical culture, but there was a lot of information in what we saw today. What can you think of that you learned about Vietnam and Vietnamese culture that you didn't know before today? What did you learn? And then also think about what is something you learned about specifically their music that you didn't know about. Maybe it's the instruments or how it's sung. What was different about the singing, the instruments, the sound? What was different than what we hear maybe in our homes? Or what was the same as what you hear in your homes? Maybe some of you that are watching might be from Vietnamese culture and might be like, oh, this is the stuff I listen to at home, which is cool, so cool. But then I bet a lot of us are not part of that culture and don't listen to that at home. So what we listen to might be very, very different from that. What are some similarities and differences? I know, talking music theory, that in Asian countries, they use a whole different, I mentioned this before, they use a whole different scale. So they use some different notes at different tonalities and use their notes differently than we do in our Western music. And then all those different instruments are really cool. And I've never gotten to play any of those. So they are new to me. So that is a little bit on Vietnamese music and culture. And I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe some of us found something new we'd like to listen to. Other than that, I hope you feel a little more enlightened, a little more globally connected, and I will see you next time.